That's timber crushing the bones of our enemies, which are cows. In this case, I guess.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Hi, I'm Seth.
And I'm Patrick. Chapter 19, the Wavedancer. And our symbol is one we haven't seen before. It's the two birds. That's like our sea folk symbol or ocean symbol. Would you say that's right?
Yeah.
I don't think we've seen that one yet.
I'd call them seagulls orbiting a star. Sort of the way
Oh, I like it. Yeah, a star.
Because that's what you see from the deck of a ship, right? You look up and you see seagulls and stars.
Yeah. And chapter 20 is just the waves symbol.
And it's also very much like, if you look at it as a four-cornered throwing star, the outline around the birds, it's very symmetrical as well. So it's got that sort of tileable pattern to it. It almost looks like it's out of an M.C. Escher painting.
I wonder who came up with these symbols. Do you think it was RJ?
No, I'm sure they hired an artist. Interior illustrations by Matthew C. Nielsen and Alyssa Mitchell.
Oh, I didn't know. I thought they might be simple enough that, and RJ might have done them himself.
It's just on the inside of the cover of the book where the copyright stuff is. If you look at that, it tells you where the artwork came from.
I always really liked the chapter headings.
Well, you've got a tattoo of one, so
True.
You should probably know who drew it.
All right. Chapter 19, the Wavedancer. With the golden sun barely over the horizon, the shiny, black-lacquered carriage rocked to a halt at the foot of the wharf behind a team of 4 matched grays, and the lanky, dark-haired driver in his big black and gold striped coat leapt down to open the door. No sigil adorned the door panel. Of course, Terran nobles gave aid to Aes Sedai only under duress, no matter how effusive the smiles, and none wanted their names or houses linked to the tower. Elaine got down gratefully, without waiting for Nynaeve, straightening her blue linen summer traveling cloak. The streets of the mall were rutted by carts and wagons, and the carriage's leather springs had not been very good. A breeze, slanting across the Aranon, actually seemed to cool after the heat of the stone. She had intended to show no effects of a rough ride, but once upright, she could not help knuckling the small of her back. At least last night's rain still holds the dust down, she thought. She suspected they had been given a carriage without curtains on purpose. North and south of her, more docks like wide stone fingers stretched into the river. The air smelled of tar and rope, fish and spices and olive oil, of nameless things rotting in the stagnant water between the piers, and a peculiar, long yellow-green fruits in huge bunches heaped in front of the stone warehouses behind her. Despite the early hour, men wearing leather vests on shirtless shoulders scurried about, toting large bundles on bent backs, or pushing handcarts piled with barrels or crates. None spared her more than a passing sullen glance, dark eyes falling quickly, forelock touched grudgingly. Most did not raise their heads at all. She was sad to see it. These Terran nobles had handled their people badly. Mishandled them was more like it. In Andor, she could have expected cheerful smiles and a respectful word of greeting, freely given by straight-backed men who knew their worth as well as hers. It was almost enough to make her regret leaving. She had been raised to lead one day and govern a proud people, and she felt the urge to teach these folk dignity. But that was Rand's job, not hers. And if he doesn't do it properly, I will give him a piece of my mind, a bigger piece. At least he had begun, by following her advice, and she had to admit he knew how to treat his people. It would be interesting to see what he had done by the time she had returned, if there's a point to coming back. And that sets our scene there. The Supergirl's approaching the docks, and yeah, Falaron, you called it. She's describing bananas, but she has no idea what they are because she comes from a more northern place. The long, yellow-green fruits in big bunches.
Oh, I
piled up.
Missed that one. That's cool. So the temperature in the stone is such that they're able to actually grow bananas?
I guess in that area, I kind of wondered that when I first noticed it myself, if Tyr is tropical enough to have bananas, or if maybe they're like imported from some of the southern islands off the coast there.
I mean, they do say they've never seen snow, right? I think the innkeeper like giggles at the thought of snow as like as fictional as Trollocs. So
I think that's an Ilian or something. Yeah, she's like silly travelers' tales of frozen rain falling from the sky and Trollocs.
How ridiculous. And she's obviously, very much showing her concern for the people as a noble woman, as a proper noble should, right? Caring for the people more so than for profit or class divisions.
Yeah, as she's looking at it through the lens of a leader or through the eyes of someone who was trained to lead.
And to lead, not to take advantage of her position.
Yeah.
We get an introduction to the sea folk. This is really the first time we get introduced to them as something other than just a mythos or something on the horizon.
The sea folk rigger was easily 100 paces long, half again as large as the next vessel in sight, with 3 great towering masts amidships, and one shorter on the raised deck at the stern. Nynaeve yells at the cart driver. She's says, "How did you manage to find every last rut and hole between here and the stone, Goodman? That took true skill. A pity none of it goes into handling horses."
Burn!
I was like, wow, that's really biting.
That's really, really pretty mean.
And then Elaine ignores her and says to the man, "We told you to go fast and you did as we asked. The streets aren't your fault and you did an excellent job under poor conditions." Gives him some money.
I think about that sentence. A kind word and a little praise were usually received as well as the silver was, if not better. And that's pretty much been true. I mean, don't get me wrong. Tip well. But say thank you too. And if you genuinely appreciate what people are doing for you, that goes a long way in terms of not getting
a lot.
Your food, messed with.
Well, yeah, and if you make eye contact and say thank you, people will remember that for some reason. We all love that. Oh, I also liked here, this is a couple paragraphs down, but Nynaeve says to Elaine, "That handful of silver you gave him should soothe away any wounds short of mortal." It's the only thing that silver shouldn't do is just heal a knife wound.
And for that, we've got the yellow aja.
And they argue about money for a bit.
Yeah. Well, of course. I mean, Nynaeve has the perspective of someone who is farm-raised, and the idea of any silver and any gold is almost ridiculous to her. Meanwhile, Elaine's like, well, of course, there's always more money where that came from. And you can almost see, where one is being, Nynaeve isn't spending money she should be, and Elaine is probably just tipping, way too much.
Opposite ends of the spectrum.
Exactly.
At some point, I don't think I even highlighted it, but Elaine makes a comment, or I think has a thought that Nynaeve thinks that we should live worse than servants. Nynaeve is like, "What do you need such a nice dress for?"
I don't think Elaine has any idea how servants are actually
Probably
how they actually live. Because she's like, "Oh, we live worse than servants," and she's still living a very nice life. Very nice.
Nynaeve, the sea folk can be touchy until they know you, or so I was taught. Do you think you might try to be a little what? Tactful, Nynaeve.
I can be tactful. No, you really can't, Nynaeve. You really can't.
The next thing I have here, well, I guess a secret of people, almost as mysterious as the Aiel. And then there's a long description as they walk onto the deck of the Athenmere ship and the sea folk themselves and what they look like.
I just want to note that there is a mention here of the lands beyond the waste again, where silk and ivory come from. And again, that's Shara. It's funny to see these little mentions of it. He keeps bringing it up over and over and over again, not to
mysterious land that we won't find out anything about until River of Souls and or A Memory of Light.
He's just that little sprinkle of foreshadowing where he's just like, oh yeah, just
I always really liked
in there.
I think this is in the next chapter, but Tom says something like, as well to try to find out where ivory comes from or what sort of plant silk is grown from, or maybe animal. Both are wrong.
Yeah, insect you're going for. The correct answer is worm. Which is also, didn't we overhear something? I think later we overhear in a bar. They're sitting there, and some guy's like, "Listen, I've got all these worms. All we need is to grow the trees, and we can be totally rich." And someone's like, "You idiot! Worms don't make silk. Trees make silk. How are you trying to sell me worms and cheat me?" And it's like,
also both correct. Yep. As Nynaeve and Elaine walk onto the boat, these Athanmere were dark. Or Atha-an-Mir, I think that might be.
Yeah, it's a 3-syllable
pronunciation. Barefoot and bare-chested men, all cleanly shaven, with straight black hair and tattooed hands, moving with the sureness of those who knew their tasks well enough to do them, with half a mind, but were putting their whole minds to it. There was a rolling grace to their movements, as though, with the ship still, they yet felt the motions of the sea. Most wore gold or silver chains around their necks, and rings in their ears, sometimes 2 or 3 in each, and some with polished stones. There were women among the crew, too, as many as the men, hauling ropes and coiling lines right with the men, with the same tattooed hands and the same baggy breeches of some dark oiled cloth, held by colorful narrow sashes and hanging open at the ankle. But the women wore loose colorful blouses, too.
For now.
All brilliant reds and blues and greens. And they had at least as many chains and earrings as the men, including, Elaine noticed with a small shock, 2 or 3 women with rings on one side of their noses. The grace of the women outshone even that of the men, and put Elaine in mind of some stories she had heard as a child by listening where she was not supposed to. Women of the Atha-an-Mir were, in those tales, the epitome of alluring beauty and temptation, pursued by all men. The women on this ship were no more beautiful than any others, really, but watching them move, she could believe those tales. 2 of the women on the raised deck at the stern were obviously not ordinary crew. They were barefoot, too, and their garb of the same cut, but one was clothed entirely in brocaded blue silks, the other in green. The older of the pair, the one in green, wore 4 small gold rings in each ear and one in the left side of her nose, all worked so they sparkled in the morning sunlight. A fine chain ran from her tiny nose ring to one earring, supporting a row of tiny dangling gold medallions, and one of the chains around her neck held a small, pierced golden box, like ornate gold lace, that she shifted to sniff from time to time. The other woman, the taller, had only 6 earrings in total, and fewer medallions. The pierced box she sniffed at was just as finely wrought gold, though. Exotic indeed. Elaine winced just thinking about those nose rings. And that chain.
I can never help but think of belly dancers when I think of the Atha-an-Mir. The way they move the hips.
With the,
and the, sort of just the gyration and rolling walk that they tend to have. And the jewelry.
And the coins attached to the chain that make a sound.
Totally.
When a dancer moves. But this is on the face, obviously. I don't think it's for sound, it's for rank.
Yeah, that's how they measure rank, is the number of earrings and nose rings you have. Which is why the Windfinder often can fall and restart from nothing and have a bunch of empty holes in their ears and nose.
And because a Windfinder is attached to their ship mistress.
Right.
Is that right? So if the ship mistress dies, they begin again at the bottom, the lowest rank.
Right. And they do tend to outlive their ship mistress because they are channelers and slowed. And so they can live 600 plus years and go through many different wave mistresses.
One more thing I wanted to add about the description that I didn't lay it out as to read. I probably just should have. But I thought it was kind of interesting that Elaine's looking around the ship and she sees no way to hold the tiller of the ship. She just sees this wheel at the front of the ship. And she's like, I don't understand how they steer this thing. I've never seen a ship that looked like that. And I just thought it was kind of interesting to point out how far superior the sea folk sailing technology is to anything that the Westlanders have ever even seen.
Vastly. And they're not sharing it.
No.
But this is really the first time that you don't have some big burly guy at the back of the ship holding a piece of wood directly connected to the udder that you just move to make the ship go in that direction. They have a wheel attached to gears that will actually turn the rudder.
Yeah, I assume, well, the more gears, right, the less resistance. The more the gears do the work for you, I would think. So you wouldn't have to be strong to steer.
Right. And that's also why you can, you turn the wheel a bunch of times to do a relatively small correction in the rudder. So you get like a large radial movement for a small degree change, and that lets you use leverage.
Oh, I also really liked, while we're on sailing and not getting it, that Elaine, there's a little after that description there, has the thought, a floor was a floor in a barn or in a palace. Why not on a ship?
And they're constantly like, and these stairs, ladder,
But they're stairs, but they're called a ladder.
Right.
Why?
Don't get it? I get the feeling that that's Robert Jordan being like, why? Why do you have to do this? Boat people, you're crazy. Here's another one of my favorite Nynaeve contradictory lines. I will remember, Nynaeve replied sharply. I can be tactful. Sharply.
Sure. So Elaine and Nynaeve approach the two women who are obviously in command of the ship, introduce themselves in the way that Moraine instructed them to, which is kind of a longish. I'll read just part of it. I am Nynaeve Elmira, Aes Sedai of the Green Aja. I seek the sail mistress of this vessel and passage, if it pleases the light. And then she introduces Elaine. I liked also that right after this, Elaine is thinking that Moraine explains how to introduce yourself properly to these seafolk women, and doesn't particularly like, although she doesn't say anything, that they plan on introducing themselves as Aes Sedai, although she is amused at their choice of Aja, the green. They both pick green.
Sure, which neither one of them really end up in. Nynaeve is yellow. I guess Elaine does end up as green in the long run.
Yeah, because Egwene's nothing, and Nynaeve, she only wants one warder anyway.
Well, because Elaine has to bond both Brigida and Rand. And so with two warders, she has to go green.
I am Coin Din Jubai Wildwind, sail mistress of Wavedancer. This is Joran Din Jubai Whitewing, my sister, of the blood, and windfinder of Wavedancer. There may be passage available, if it pleases the light. The light illumine you, and see you safe to your journey's end. It was a surprise that the two were sisters. Elaine could see the resemblance, but Joran looked much younger.
I want to say Coine? Whatever.
Coine? I thought it might be Quina, or...
Yeah, oof, who knows. The important part is that Joran looked much younger, even though they are probably almost exactly the same age, if not twins.
I like to think that they are twins, and one is just significantly slowed, but we have no idea.
Right.
They're probably just a little apart, but one is much younger because she is a channeler, and the other is not. Or appears to be younger, I should say.
They're pretty... She may even be the older sister, even though she appears to be the younger.
Oh, yeah. We get a kind of rough description from Elaine that Coin is... She looks like middle-aged. She describes like the kind of deeper wrinkles on her face, like crinkly lines in her eyes when she smiles. Is there maybe a little gray, too? I can't remember.
I think so.
Her hair.
Yeah.
But yeah, they could easily both be, 45 or 55, and one looks like she's 20, and the other one looks her age or something.
Yeah, and something of that younger woman reminded her of Avienda. It's absurd, of course.
Yeah, that's a great little tip-off. This is Elaine recognizing the spark in Joran. Although she doesn't know how to do this yet, necessarily, she does notice that in Avienda and Joran she senses the same thing, although she doesn't know what it is.
And at this point, we, as readers going through for the first time, don't know that either Avienda or Joran can channel.
Right.
But that's what the implication here is that she's feeling that affinity for them that she would feel towards any woman who can channel.
The Seafolk did not charge, this is also in Elaine's head. The Seafolk did not charge for passage, according to Moraine. It was a gift, which, just coincidentally, would be exchanged for a gift of equal value.
That's called
okay,
a purchase.
That's a transaction. Yeah.
The Seafolk, who are the biggest sticklers for bargains and prices and making sure they get everything right there. And yet, here's my gift. I'm just going to bargain with you about your return gift and make a deal.
See, I'm not just going to give you a gift unless you're giving me a gift of equal value.
Under the light, it is decided. So they head down to the cabin and basically end up in the sailmistress's cabin. And they give a pretty decent description of it. pretty big space considering the fact that it's on a ship. Probably much bigger in terms of, it's much longer than it is wide, but it's probably just as wide as a normal ship. And then it just looks really skinny because of its relative length.
Zarth, thank you. Apparently it's pronounced Koeen Din Jubai. Koeen. And I'll read the description, because this is one of the very few descriptions that we get of the inside of a Seafolk vessel.
Sure.
I guess there's a few later, but much later.
Well, when Rand gets trapped in one, like a box.
The box.
Back in the box.
Another narrow ladder, or staircase, led down into a neat room, larger and taller than Elaine had expected from her experiences on smaller vessels, with windows across the stern and gimbaled lamps on the walls. We talked about gimbaled lamps once. It's just like a mechanism so that the fire moves, or the lit lamp, oil lamp, or whatever it is they're using, or candle, moves with the sway of the ship so that it doesn't burn the walls as the ship moves around.
I feel like we had a conversation on one of the earlier podcasts when they were on a ship about what that is and how it worked.
Yeah,
we did a whole bit of research there.
Almost everything seemed to have been built into the room, except for a few lacquered chests of various sizes. The bed was large and low, right under the stern windows, and a narrow table surrounded by armchairs stood across the middle of the room. There was very little clutter. Rolled charts lay on the table, a few ivory carvings of strange animals stood on railed shelves, and half a dozen bare-bladed swords of different shapes, some that Elaine had never seen before, rested on hooks on the walls. I'm going to interrupt myself and say, I imagine these are prizes taken from battles. These are like the swords of the many people that have tried to attack her ship, and she's kept them.
That makes a lot of sense.
That's what I'm imagining. Because, we'll see in a second here, an oddly worked square brass gong hung from a beam over the bed, while right before the stern windows, as if in a place of honor, a helmet set on a featureless wooden head, carved for the purpose, a helmet like the head of some monstrous insect, lacquered red and green, with a narrow white plume to either side, one broken. The helmet Elaine recognized. Ch19, she gasped before thinking. Nynaeve gave her a vexed look, and deservedly. They had agreed it would make more sense, and ring more true, if Nynaeve, as the older, took the lead and did most of the talking. Cohen and Joran exchanged unreadable glances. "You know of them?" the sailmistress said. "Of course, one must expect Aes Sedai to know these things. This far east we hear a score of stories, the truest less than half true." Elaine knew she should leave it at that, but curiosity tickled her tongue. "How did you come by the helmet, if I may ask?" "Wavedancer encountered a Ch19 ship last year," Cohen replied. Sorry. "They wished to take him, but I did not wish to give him up." She shrugged slightly. "I have the helmet to remind me. And the sea took the Ch19, the light be merciful to all who sail. I will not go close to a vessel with ribbed sails again." "You were lucky," Nynaeve said curtly. "The Ch19 hold captive women who can channel, and make them channel as a weapon. If they had one on that ship, you would be regretting ever having seen it." Elaine grimaced at her.
They definitely had one on that ship.
Though it was too late. She could not tell whether the Seafolk women were offended by Nynaeve's tone. The pair kept the same neutral expressions, but Elaine was beginning to realize they did not show very much on their faces, not to strangers, anyway. And then Coeen changes the subject. She says, "Let's speak of passage and prices."
I have no doubt that there was a hell of a battle between the Wave Mistress and the Seafolk and the Ch19.
Coeen describes it later.
Wasn't she able to break their
remember
mast
exactly.
or something like that? Or she sets it on fire?
Oh, wait, no. Yes, I'm sorry.
That's
I think
right.
that was Joran from her perspective.
Yeah.
She says, I'm very bad at channeling fire, but I did manage to set a few small fires on their ship to distract them while we were trying to escape.
Thank the light it was enough, and it got them, and then they ended up burning and sinking.
The Ch19 raker, I'm sure we'll get there and I'll see it, but the Ch19 ship approaches the Atha and Mir ship and tries to board, and then Joran sets fires on the ship, and while they're some are scrambling to put the fires out, the Seafolk are able to kill a lot of the Ch19 and detach the ships.
Yep.
Ships.
Well, they're able to sweep the boarding party off the deck and then sail away. And that's where her husband, the The
Cargo
Master?
I
Yes,
think his title
that's
is.
right. He got the scar from fighting off the Ch19 and getting them off the deck.
Nice big face scar.
Yep. Definitely, this is definitely a matriarchal society. There's no doubt about it. The women dominate. The men do some trading.
Yeah, it seems that we see a little later that there's a kind of... Queen is definitely in charge, but when her husband finds out later that, like, he's done all this planning, like, he knows where they're going to be the next couple of months, so he's got this different kinds of cargo where it'll trade well at each port that they move through, and he's, like, just trying to make a profit. That's his job, to make the ship profitable. And later, when Queen tells him that, like, no, we're not going to Maine, and we're not going to Shar, we're going in the opposite direction, he kind of... I would say flip out, but in a very gentle way that's kind of subtle, and she talks about it. But we'll get there.
It's like trying to import IPAs into Portland. Not a good business strategy.
It's not worth anything here. That's what comes out of our water fountains. Right.
I'm pretty sure IPA comes out of the tap in the kitchen. Just turn that on. We wash our dishes in it. I mean, it's really hard to get anything that's not IPA around here.
I've been complaining about that a lot recently. I walk into a store now and I'm like, all right, let's look for what they have that isn't an IPA and go from there. Every once in a while I'll still drink a very hoppy beer like that, but I'm just burned out. I've drank so many of them. Elaine and Nynaeve are sitting there and...
They want to speak to the manager?
Yeah. A young woman walks in to serve tea and she is not wearing a top. And they're totally blown away by their puritanical sensibilities. And Queen chastises her. I figured I'd throw that out there because we don't know anything yet about the Seafolk customs as far as when women can and cannot wear shirts. I shouldn't say cannot, but I think the idea is to not offend the sensibilities of the shorebound and just show them what they want to see so we can come in here, do our trading, and leave.
Right,
and then we can live our lives as we want to when we're not in their house, you know?
They think it's as ridiculous to force women to wear shirts as it would be if you forced men to wear shirts when you're out at sea. Like, it just doesn't make any sense because shirts get in the way. Why would you wear them? You're sweating, you're hot, the sun's beating down. Just take your shirt off. And, like, this new girl, what's her name, who's serving them tea, is like, well, it just doesn't make any sense. Why should I wear? It'd be like, forcing you to wear a baseball cap. Like, okay, I can do it, but why would I want to every day, all the time? Why is it offensive to see the top of my head?
But the custom is that until they're out of sight of land, the women leave their shirts on. And like I said, I'm pretty sure that it's to, we'll follow their rules while we're in their house. But when we're in our house, the ocean, we can do whatever we want and follow our own customs.
Everybody's got nipples.
This way we don't offend people whose money we want.
Yeah, they're trading. They're trading. And they're trading with a lot of different cultures. And so they're probably actually pretty good about at least observing enough of a local culture not to piss people off.
Yeah. Sends the girl away, tells her she'll be cleaning the bilges for the entire next day. She's like, get down there now, and when the sun rises again, you can come back out or something like that. Until there is no land in sight and has been none for one full day, you'll work cleaning at the bilges, where garments are a hindrance.
Basically, guess what? You screwed up, so you get to clean poop. Didn't someone else just have that punishment?
I think it's the, rocks and water at the bottom of a ship.
Yeah. I mean,
yes, we were just reading about this, but I don't remember anything.
Yeah, you're right. I always think of the bilge as, but isn't that where you also put human waste? I know it's just where water and stuff gets into the.
I just go over the side of the boat. The area on the outer surface of a ship's hull where the bottom curves to meet the vertical sides. So it's the very bottom of the ship. And yeah, I think it's this level of technology was just filled with rocks to so that the boat sinks enough to stay flat and afloat.
They want ballast.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that fills up with water because it leaks in through the cracks in the wood, and so you have to pump it out frequently.
Bail it out?
And that's what I thought that she would have to do, is basically be down there and there's like a hand pump, and she's just pumping out that water as it gets in.
I don't know, man. I'm like an Aiel here. Yes, I have heard of boats.
We are not sailors.
Yes, I have heard of these bridges.
So yeah, I guess a bilge boy is just someone who's like down there pumping the bilge. It's in the dark.
Cleaning out the mold and gross stuff.
Oh, God, it's probably the most, like, foul, stagnant water down in there.
Herod Fell says, yes, you poop over the side.
I guess that makes sense. So is Nynaeve just, like, sticking her bottom out over the side to use the bathroom?
I guess. I mean, I guess you could use, like, a chamber pot and then dump that over the side.
That
but then
makes
you
more
gotta
sense.
carry your waste bucket around, which is...
Or someone else does.
Almost probably worse than just going over the side. Then you got a bucket that you've got to clean.
She is puking into a bucket pretty frequently. We know that.
Fair.
Yeah. It's not... No, a poop deck is something different.
Is it? I don't know what to believe.
Do you carry toilet paper on a ship, or do you just use seawater?
I mean, seawater is probably more efficient. There's plenty of it, right? I don't know. But if you're on a really big ship like this, can you even reach the water?
I mean, maybe you need a bucket to lower... That's, you poop in the bucket and then dump it and lower it into the sea to get some seawater to clean yourself and the bucket. I think we're off into absurd speculation land here.
Oh, poop deck. The name originates from the French word for stern. It's not an English word.
So you poop from your rear because it's your...
La poop. That's literally what it's called. Poupe.
Poopy.
From the Latin, puppus. There's a lot that I don't know about naval things. Basically, I know nothing.
So you've been navel gazing?
Yes, but on the internet.
So the next thing I have is Nynaeve telling them we need to go to Tanchico. I know it's not where you were going to go, but here's 10,000 gold. A small gift. Sorry, 3,000 gold crowns.
Yeah, letter of rights.
She's essentially writing a check.
Yeah.
That's basically what the letter of rights is like, this bank has my money. This says you can withdraw it from my account.
Coeen touched the letter of rights with one finger, read, "A vast summage for the passage," she murmured, "even counting that you ask me to alter my sailing plans. I am more surprised now than before. You know that we very seldom carry Aes Sedai on our ships. Very seldom. Of all who ask passage, only Aes Sedai may be refused, and almost always are. As from the first day of the first sailing, Aes Sedai know this, and so almost never ask." She was looking into her teacup, not at them, but Elaine glanced the other way and caught the Windfire studying their hands lying on the table. No, their rings. Moraine had not said anything about this. She had pointed out the Raker as the swiftest ship available and encouraged them to make use of it. Then again, she had given them these letters of rights, very likely sufficient to buy a fleet of ships like this one. Well, several ships at least, because she knew it would take that much to bribe them to carry us? But why had she kept secrets? A foolish question. Moraine always kept secrets. But why waste their time? "Do you mean to refuse us passage?" Nynaeve had abandoned tact for bluntness. "If you do not carry Aes Sedai, why did you bring us down here? Why not tell us up above and be done with it?" The sail mistress unlatched one arm of her chair, rose, and went to peer out of the stern windows at the stone. Her earrings and medallions across her left cheek glittered in the light of the rising sun. "He can wield the power, so I have heard, and he holds the sword that cannot be touched. The Aiel have come over the dragon wall to his call. I have seen several in the streets, and it is said they fill the stone. The stone of Tyr has fallen, and war breaks over the nations of the land. Those who once ruled have returned, and been driven back for the first time. Prophecy is being fulfilled." Nynaeve looked as confounded as Elaine felt at this change of subject. "The prophecies of the dragon?" Elaine said after a moment. "Yes, they are being fulfilled. He is the dragon reborn, sail mistress. He's a stubborn man who hides his feelings so deeply I cannot find them, that's what he is," she thinks. Coeen turned. "Not the prophecies of the dragon," I said, "the Jendai prophecy. The prophecy is of the Coromor, not the one you wait for in dread, the one we seek, herald of a new age. At the breaking of the world, our ancestors fled to the safety of the sea, while the land heaved and broke as storm waves do. It is said they knew nothing of the ships they took to flee, but the light was with them, and they survived. They did not see land again until it was still once more, and by then much had changed. All, everything, the world, drifted on the water and the wind. It was in the years after that Gendai prophecy was first spoken. We must wander the waters until the Koromor returns, and serve him at his coming. We are bound to the sea. The salt water courses in our veins. Most of us set no foot on land except to await another ship, another sailing. Strong men weep when they must serve ashore. Women ashore go onto a ship to bear their children, into a rowboat if no more is at hand. For we must be born on the water, as we must die on it, and be given to it in death. The prophecy is being fulfilled. He is the Koromor. I said I serve him. You are proof of that you are here in this city. That is in the prophecy as well. The white tower shall be broken by his name, and I said I shall kneel to wash his feet and dry them with their hair. You will have a long wait if you expect to see me wash any man's feet, Nynaeve said wryly.
There's a lot in there.
Some Aes Sedai, not all the Aes Sedai, Nynaeve.
And honestly, at this point, there aren't really a lot of Aes Sedai serving him. I think the Gendai prophecy is telling of much later when they actually do kneel and swear to him. And that kneeling and swearing and washing of his feet is, I think, what the prophecy refers to. So I don't think those events have happened yet, even though here Coen thinks that it's Elaine and Nynaeve who are the Aes Sedai serving him.
Right. Or that all Aes Sedai would serve him or something like that.
Elaine's wondering why Moraine had not said anything about the the Sea Folk policy of not really taking on Aes Sedai, and it's because she's trying to find out whether or not these wave mistresses can actually channel, if the Sea Folk have channelers on the boats, because she suspects they can, and that's why she sent the girls to them. Windfinder, thank you. And then, of course, she thinks they're referring to the prophecies of the dragon, but they have their own prophecies of the Gendai. Well, not the prophecy of the Gendai, the prophecies of the Koromor, which is the Gendai prophecy. And I had one question. So when I was reading the Gendai prophecy, okay, so as I'm looking at the Gendai prophecy, one on the wiki, it says, the north shall be tied to the east, and the west shall be bound to the south. I thought that was one of the answers he got from the snakes and the foxes, not part of the Gendai prophecy. And I was just wondering if...
The answer he got from the snakes and foxes it's worded slightly different, but it says the same thing.
And so that's what I was wondering, are we getting to the prophecy from two different locations, both the Gendai prophecy and from the snakes and foxes, and it just has a slightly different wording?
Yeah, because I couldn't repeat it back to you, but what you just read is not what the snakes and foxes say, but it means the same thing, but the words are different.
Interesting. Okay.
It's like the east and south must be as one, the west and north must be as one, and the two as one, or something like that. That's what the snakes and foxes says, something more similar to that.
Although I was thinking that in there, the two as one is followed immediately by something that makes me think that that's actually talking about Rand and Moradin merging together into a single person.
Oh, it could be. I never saw it that way, but that does make sense.
Because I think it's followed up directly by like one will live and one will die. The east and the north must be as one. The west and the south must be as one. The two must be as one. To live you must die. So you can say the two must be as one if that refers to the beginning of that. You have the east and the north, the west and the south, and then they have to make a treaty. But if that applies to the second half of the prophecy, the two must be as one, to live you must die. That says, you and Moradin must be one, to live you have to die in his body. His body has to die.
I like that interpretation. I had never thought of that before.
And yeah, the wording is very different between those answers. The east and the north must be as one, versus the Gendai prophecy, which says the north shall he tie to the east. And then in the passive voice, the west shall be bound to the south, which is, of course, the Ch19 do.
Cool. Well, right after we get Coen's explanation, I believe it was Coen talking, Coen's explanation of the Gendai prophecies and why they are going to allow Aes Sedai onto their ship and give them passage. After that, she says, why do you wish to journey to Tanchico? It is an unpleasant port of call now. She says, I docked there last winter. Shorefolk nearly swarmed my vessel seeking passage out to anywhere. They did not care, so long as it was away from Tanchico. I cannot believe conditions have improved, basically, she says.
Which they haven't.
And Nynaeve just bluntly answers once again, which annoys Elaine. But she says, we hunt the Black Aja, sail mistress. We believe some of them are in Tanchico. She met Nynaeve's angry stare calmly. Oh, wait, is that not Nynaeve talking? Anyway, we must find them, else they may harm the Dragon Reborn, the Kuramor. The light see us safe to docking, the Windfinder breathed. It was the first time she had spoken, and Elaine stared at her in surprise. Jorn was frowning, and not looking at anyone, but she spoke to the sailmistress.
So that was all Elaine.
Yeah, I introduced that.
Yeah, it was all Elaine reading, giving away their secrets.
And actually, I mean, I feel like she did a pretty good job here because she says, we must find them, else they may harm. And then in the text, it literally says, we must find them, else they may harm, ... the Dragon Reborn. She just is like trying to give them what they need to hear to get this thing done and get to Tanchico, hunt these women down.
Well, and based on what they've said is they say they are loyal to Rand. And so she's telling the truth. She's saying, like, listen, we are trying to help him. And if you want to also help him, if you claim to be dedicated to him, you're going to help us.
Right. And I also kind of wanted to point out here, there's a bit of subtlety. We see Joran say, Joran was frowning and not looking at anyone, but she spoke to the sailmistress. The sailmistress being the person in charge. But Joran says to the sailmistress, we can take them, my sister, we must. Coen nodded. Elaine exchanged looks with Nynaeve and saw her own questions mirrored in the other woman's eyes. Why was it the Windfinder who decided? Why not the sailmistress? And she's just looking at that slightly wrong. It's not that the Windfinder can or should decide in this situation, but essentially what the Windfinder is saying is that I am willing to take the risk of on my own life so that we can do this because it must be done. She's telling her sister, it's cool. Like, you can go ahead.
I don't even see it as like a life thing that she's taking a risk for her life, but just that secret that it's almost more important than her life. It's the secret of the sea folk who are hiding that the Windfinders can in fact channel. It's a whole society's secret that she's risking. And only the channeler has the standing to risk that secret. The captain herself cannot. And that is, of course, why all Aes Sedai are...
Or wouldn't, I suspect, because if she made that decision, what they're worried about is potentially losing their Windfinders, which would ruin their culture and their, the way they survive, like the whole way their society's built. But, in this case, it's two sisters, and I feel like one sister's telling the other, like, we have to do this.
Right.
And the sailmistress agrees. It's not, I don't think it's one instructing the other, we have to do this. I think she's just saying, like...
No. I mean, normally the captain would always be the one who makes the decision, but because this is a very special circumstance, she turns to her sister and says, can we do this?
Listens to her opinion.
And she says, yeah, we can do this. And not only can we, but we have to. Make all the Aes Sedai think they have no channelers by sending them, like, the weakest they've got and being like, yeah, this is all we've got. We're not very good channelers, I guess. Here you go. Meanwhile, they have these, like, super powerful channelers who can, like, weave these massive strands of the power to affect huge areas.
And a lot of knowledge. It's almost kind of a little funny to me that they have that. I mean, I'm sure that the White Tower would try to interfere if they knew the whole truth. But
of course they would.
Good luck. Where are you gonna get them? You're gonna go out to the ocean and test the girls? Get out of here!
You can't even get there.
Nobody can follow them.
It's ridiculous. And that's the truth of what the girls discover, is that the Aes Sedai do not have the authority, the power, or the monopoly on the one power that they think they do.
Yeah, that's a good point to make.
They're out there being like, we're the shit, we're the channelers, and it's like, you're 1,000 mediocre channelers. Meanwhile, there's the kin, there's the sea folk, there's the wise ones, there's the freaking dreadlords and the blight, and like they outnumber you massively.
Not to mention the Shan-Chan and Sharans.
Right, yeah, not to mention. The number of channelers in this world is so large compared to the number of Aes Sedai. They just don't have the power they think they do.
I like this part. After everything is kind of agreed, the door opens. A heavy-shouldered, gray-haired man in loose green silk breeches and a sash came in, ruffling a sheaf of papers. And so this guy is the cargo master, who's also the sail mistress's husband. I don't know if that's they just happen to be together or if that's like a typical arrangement. Yes, Felron, I wanted to get at that. And he's looking down at his papers, and he was fastening a peculiar wire framework over his ears to hold clear lenses in front of his eyes. The sea folk made the best-looking glasses and burning lenses and the like, of course, somewhere on their islands, but Elaine had never seen anything like this device. He peered through the lenses at the papers and began talking without looking up.
So that's the first time we see glasses.
Yes. That's the first time.
I do think, doesn't Herod Fell wear glasses as well?
Is that right, guys? I think that might be right. It certainly suits his character.
I just remember, I feel like Min was also like looking at his glasses and being like, what are those things?
In any case, he finally does look up and says, "Oh, my apologies, I didn't know you had guests." And Coane just starts instructing him, saying, "By midday, my husband," Coane said, "I will be falling down river. By nightfall, I will be at sea." He stiffened. "Am I still cargo master, wife, or has my place been taken while I did not see? You are cargo master, husband, but the trading must stop now, and preparations begin for getting under way. We sail for Tanchico." Tanchico! The papers crumpled in his fist, and he brought himself under control with an effort. "Wife, no! Sailmistress, you told me our next port was Maine, and then eastward to Shara. I've traded with that in mind." So he's kind of like losing it a little. He's like, You're
ruining all my plans."
Yeah. "May I ask why my trade is to be ruined and Wavedancer impoverished?" he says.
It's like, because I've invested all of our, he's invested a ton of money in the goods, and then he's going to go have to sell it for maybe even a loss.
Yeah. He's like, if we take the stuff we got from the West and bring it back to the West to sell it, it's not worth anything there. That's where we got it from. And she says, "I am sailmistress, my husband. Wavedancer sails when and where I say. It must be enough, for now." "As you say, sailmistress," he rasped, "so it is." He touched his heart. Elaine thought Coane flinched and patted out with his back stiff as one of the ship masts. "I must make this up to him," Coane murmured softly, staring at the door. "Of course it is pleasant making up with him. Usually. He saluted me like a deck boy, sister." I liked that because it gives us a lot of insight to what just happened there.
The insult that he sort of gave. It'd be like...
That she won't explain. That she's like pulling rank on him. And he's like, "Okay." And it's like as if I bowed to someone.
I think if I told you to do something and you gave me a salute, it would be like the most
yeah, kind of like that.
"Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, whatever you say." It's like, fuck you, man.
And she knows. She's like, "Ooh, I think I'm sleeping on the couch tonight." I feel like is basically what she's saying.
Oh, I don't think she's sleeping on the couch at all. I think she's sleeping under. She's got to make it up to him.
Yeah. And she also says, "Well, making up is usually pleasant, but..."
Because don't forget, the more rank she pulls in public, the more rank he gets in private.
Yes.
Because that, like we see that with Lan and Nynaeve's situation.
She does also say, "Of course it is pleasant making up with him. Usually. Period." Usually is one sentence. It's just there's in between two periods.
I think this time he's just going to be pissed, honestly.
Very angry,
just really like, what the hell? Because she still won't be able to tell him what's going on. She's going to basically take the money out of her own savings so he can't ask questions.
Right. It seems like she's in charge of the ship and its crew, while he's in charge of its finances, and her sister is in charge of driving the thing, essentially.
She's the engine.
Right. She's the engine. Coane is the brain, and Coane's husband. Did we get a name there? I don't know if we got a name.
We do
there.
get a name.
Coane's husband is kind of the bank account, for lack of a better way to say that. The accountant. That's a better way to say it.
Toram is his name.
He's the one who says what we're going to do. This is how the best way to make a profit.
And she says, all my life, all I've had to do is put out my hand, and he puts money in it. Like, I don't worry about how much money I'm spending. I just sail the ship.
Travis says pilot, co-pilot, and quartermaster. Yeah, that's a much better way to put it, I think.
So the Wave Mistress doesn't even accept money from Nynaeve and crew. She doesn't even take the check. She essentially hands the check back to them.
Yeah, she's saying basically, this is so important that I will pay myself.
And I can't tell anyone who you are because then people won't sail because they think Aes Sedai are bad luck.
And by the way, if you wear your rings, you're telling everyone who you are, so can you not?
And they're like, no, sure, no problem. Pops them right off.
For answer, Nynaeve plucked her great serpent ring off and dropped it into her pouch. Elaine did the same, a bit more reluctantly. She rather enjoyed having people see her ring. Not quite trusting Nynaeve's remaining store of diplomacy at this point, she spoke up before the other woman could. Sailmistress, we have offered you a gift of passage, if it pleases you. If it does not, may I ask what would? Coeen came back to the table to look at the letter of rights again, then pushed it back to Nynaeve. I do this for the Coromor. I will see you safe ashore where you wish, if it pleases the light. It shall be done. She touched the fingers of her right hand to her lips. It is agreed under the light. Joran made a strangled sound. My sister. Has a cargo master ever mutinied against his sailmistress? Coeen gave her a flat-eyed stare. I will put in the gift of passage from my own chest, and if Torum ever hears of it, my sister, I will put you in the bilges with Dorel, for ballast, perhaps. That the two seafolk women had dropped formality was confirmed when the Windfinder laughed aloud. And then, your next port would be in Ch19, my sister, or Camelin, for you could not find the water without me. The sailmistress addressed Elaine and Nynaeve regretfully. Properly, Aes Sedai, since you serve the Coromor, I should honor you, as I would sailmistress and windfinder of another ship. We should bathe together, and drink honeyed wine, and tell each other stories to make ourselves laugh and weep. But I must make ready to sail, and Wavedancer rose like his name, leaping, pounding against the dock. Elaine whipped back and forth in her chair, wondering as it continued whether this was really better than being thrown to the deck. Then, finally, it was over, the leap slowing, growing smaller. Coeen scrambled to her feet and raced for the ladder, Joran at her heels, already shouting orders to look for damage to the hull.
No, so they just got hit with what's essentially a massive wave.
An earthquake
yeah,
of some
an earthquake
kind, or
hit the stone, which they think is Rand, which of course it is Rand. And it's Rand driving the sword into the stone and leaving it there.
But of course, Nynaeve is like, no, Rand must have read your letter.
Yeah, I was going to say. They think it's about the letters, but no, it's...
Of course the world revolves around us, right?
Jeez. And I was saying to Patrick, actually, he was like, oh, it's not about the letters, it's about the sword in the stone. And I went, oh my God, really? I've always thought it was about the letters. I always took Elaine's word for it. I totally missed the fact that it was something else. I don't know how, after all of these years, I've been reading that wrong, but I really have been reading it wrong.
It could have been.
It wasn't.
I get where you were coming from.
It was the sword in the stone. Clearly it was the sword in the stone. We see Perrin running away.
When the stone rings, and it happens again here, but the girls are are closer than Perrin, I think, to the stone.
And just like with the cleansing of the source, where an event happens and then we see it from a bunch of different characters' perspectives, where you sort of jump back in time and then go forward up until the event. That's what we're doing here, where we saw Rand put the sword in the stone, and then we jump backwards to Perrin's point of view, and now we're backwards to the girl's point of view. So we're doing things a little bit differently today than we have in the past. We got a new pair of microphones, so we're using the Blue Yetis. These were a gift to us by Kirk in the Discord.
Kirky, thank you. This is really nice hardware.
Really, really nice hardware. But it's also much more sensitive than the mics we've been using in the past. And so we're doing an experiment and actually recording in separate rooms and in Hangout. So we're actually able to see each other in Google Hangout and hear each other through Discord. But hopefully we won't be picking up each other's audio.
Yeah, at all. That's kind of the idea. That's just like one of the flaws that was easy to point out about the perhaps now old Watt Spoilers podcast is that sometimes our mic would pick each other up, like if one of us talked above a certain volume.
And during editing, yeah, if we talk over each other, I'd actually have to, even if I muted one person, you could still hear them talking in the background. Or if I tried to pull apart in time so we weren't actually talking over each other, you'd hear me say something in the background and then you'd hear me say it again in the foreground. And in order to change that, we're really trying to just be in separate spaces. But we don't really want to lose the feeling of being in the same room, so we're trying Google Hangouts.
Yeah.
But that also means you can see us now, if you want, on really crappy webcams.
Is something we didn't plan, but it could be a cool element that, like, if you're in Discord, you can... Yes, Valron, now it's just one nerd in a basement and the other in a living room. But that could be a cool feature in the future. If you're in the Discord and you see the link, you can click it and you can watch me sit here and drink and read.
Yeah, it might as well be a static image. It's not like there's a whole lot going on here.
Yeah, I guess not really. I'm just moving my head around slightly. That's all it really captures. Yeah, sadly, that's right, Fire Phoenix. We do have to wear pants now that...
No, we don't.
We're recording on. Yeah,
Shirts.
I mean, you can only see from like my chest up, so...
Unlike the Ch19,
you know.
we can wear no pants, but we have to wear a shirt. They can get away with no shirt and pants.
The sea folk.
I'm going to do that all goddamn episode, aren't I?
I'll try to crack to.
Thanks. Yeah, I had to get a haircut in anticipation of us doing this, so I'm less...
Really?
Well, you saw the haircut. Total coincidence.
Yeah, it was just your typical haircut. I didn't really think about it too much.
Totally because of this. Totally.
When I was younger, I thought I would be bald by now. I'm 31. I just turned 31 last month. And I still have, like, a reasonable amount of hair. Like, I haven't gotten to the point where I'm like, nah, I better just shave this, you know?
I find I tend to lose my hair in step functions, where I'll lose, like, some hair, and then it'll be steady for a while. And then I'll lose a little bit more, and then it's, like, steady for a while.
Yeah, I feel like in, like, my mid-20s, I lost hair really rapidly when I was just like, oh, shit, here it goes. Like, I knew this was going to happen. All the men in my family are bald, so... And then it just stopped. It was like 6-7 years have gone by. I don't think anything has changed. So that says wait until you're 40.
I figure I've got about 3-4 years left of good health before I'm in the shitter.
Yeah.
Right? I'm about 36, 37. Well, I just turned 37. So, you know, once I hit 40, things, you know, I hear that's when you don't get any better pretty much ever again.
Yeah, my mom and my dad both warned me separately. They were like, oh, when you're 50, like, get ready to wear glasses. We both had great vision until, like, hit that 50th birthday,
Yep.
and it's like suddenly you can't read anything across the room anymore.
With my mom, it was 40.
Yeah?
Yep. At least we won't have bifocals because we don't have short, we're not nearsighted right now. And so when you get older, you start to become farsighted. And that's why you need bifocals, because you're nearsighted and farsighted.
Mm.
Which has always seemed backwards to me, because nearsighted means far blind. And so it should be like far blind and near blind.
Jules is, I guess, what you would call nearsighted. So she can see anything close enough to her, but if there's, like, lines on a movie screen, then she needs glasses. Is that nearsighted?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And when she gets old, she'll be farsighted, and she'll need bifocals. Because what happens is, as you get older, the cornea solidifies and becomes less elastic, and so it can't adjust to the focusing, and so you lose the ability to focus. But at the same time, your eyeball is still squished weirdly, so you're still nearsighted. So you're farsighted.
I better
and
start
nearsighted.
channeling more. I'd like to just stay this old. That'll be fine. That'll be fine.
Can
thank
we
you.
slow the way this Windfinder did?
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?